As we know, the effects of pollution and environmental degradation fall most heavily on communities that are marginalized in our society, such as BIPOC and EJ communities. And there is an imbalance of power between the impacted communities and those who create and regulate pollution. Today, our panel will discuss how organizations can move towards becoming anti-racist, building trust in EJ communities, and examples of how P2 and green business programs across both regions 9 and 10 are successfully sharing best practices. We're thrilled to have 4 unique and insightful speakers on this panel. Mentee LongEarth and Enrique Gonzalez with the King County, Washington Hazardous Waste will share their initiatives and training and how they partner for results. Maria Corona from the California Green Business Network will provide examples of how green business programs across California and the U.S. are reaching EJ communities. And Angel Contreras Cruz with the Pollution Prevention Resource Center will share lessons learned as he conducted training in Spanish on using safer choice cleaning products with EJ businesses. After all the presentations have concluded, we're going to open it up for discussion. We invite questions. And now I'll hand it off to the superhuman known as Casey Carroll.
Good morning. My name is Cassie Carroll. I'm with the Illinois Green Business Program and the Green Business Engagement National Network. I'm so thrilled to be here and meet all of you in Region 9 and 10. There's so many familiar faces that I know from Zoom. It's great to meet in person, but it's so nice to get to know new people in the room as well. So I'd like to, and I'm thrilled to be co-moderating with you, Jessica, too. But we'll now feature speakers who have will highlight their experience in addressing organizational racism and healing, as well as statewide and localized pollution prevention work in EJ communities. I'm really pleased to introduce Mentee LongEarth, the Racial Equity Manager, and Enrique Gonzalez, the Racial Equity Planner, both from King County Hazardous Waste Management Program. They'll be sharing more about their backgrounds and their incredible work that they're doing in King County here shortly. But they're joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much for being here and joining us today. Take it away, Mentee and Enrique. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Doing this in Zoom, so we want to upfront just apologize that we both have scratchy throats, and you being with EPA, it's not a surprise that we are having smoke issues up here, and it's impacting our health. So really glad to be here this morning. My name is Mentee LongEarth. My tribal name is Washington, and I am an enrolled citizen of the Santina Nation of South Carolina. I am also Muskogee Creek and Choctaw. I also am a grandchild of people who hail from Cuba and West Africa, the Dominican Republic, Ireland, and Scotland, and I think a couple of English people snuck in there. I'm not sure. You never know. So I am a grandmother. I am the young person that was mentored by Roberto Maestas and El Centro de la Raza. I am also a person who has been mentored by Claudia Kaufman, and I am a resident currently being allowed to live on the historically cared for and still cared for grounds of Coast Salish people here in Puget Sound. And I give a special shout out to our dear friend and Region Administrator EPA 10, Casey 6 Killer. Gonzalez.
Muy buenos días, me llamo Enrique González. Mi familia, mis raíces son de Guanajuato y del estado de Chihuahua. Y nací en Seattle y tengo raíces también aquí en el centro de la raza en Seattle. Good morning, everybody. My name is Enrique Gonzalez. My family hails from Guanajuato, Mexico, as well as Chihuahua, Mexico. I was born and raised here in Seattle. Also have the same mentor that Mentee and I share, which is Roberto Maestas, and a lot of the work that we have continued to do has been built on much of the training that we've had since the early days, since we were young, and we continue to do that work today. And what's actually funny is I want to point out, Minty and I have been doing this work together for many years. We've had this job together for about a year. But what's funny is that this picture was taken during another job. And so you might find it, what's very interesting about our work is that the work never changes, but our jobs often change. So that's a principle we'll point out a little more later. Yeah, you got it on mute.
Sorry about that. The historical context is very important for how we got here at hazardous waste in King County. And for historical context, they started this work about 10 years ago, long before we came, when hazardous waste decided that they wanted to make a stated commitment to be equitable. And to be equitable, they started to dive in deeper and decided, let's be specific about that. Let's be anti-racist. Doing that 10 years ago, it took them many, many years of meeting and strategizing and making some decisions that needed course correction and making some great changes. And what came out of that eventually was the Racial Equity Strategic Plan. This was written by people who represented the 5 different entities that are part of our agency. So our agency is a matrix, and it has 5 different parent agencies, and that helps with our accountability. And so they developed this Racial Equity Strategic Plan, and they adopted it in 2018. And with that was the parent document, or the companion document of the Racial Equity Implementation Plan. That plan was concluded in 2021, and this year we have been doing a full assessment, and we will be making recommendations for moving forward. It's really important to know that one of the anti-racist organizers that we followed, Jim Dunn, rest in peace, always said from People's Institute, if you don't have a plan, any road will take you there. We have a plan and we know what road we're on. Next slide.
So, I think this is you, Min, right? Oh, okay. So, we had to begin the work by laying some type of a foundation and laying some type of a way of addressing the work. You also had to keep in mind that we were entering a situation where a lot of people were talking about wanting to do this work, but there was no clear understanding of how to do it or what to base it on. And so what we as organizers for years have been doing is, working with a set of principles that we were introduced to, at least I was when I was 15 years old. And so that would be the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And using a lot of the principles that they list as organizing tools, we began to implement a lot of different types of tools that we could use and really kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of what was going on. And so a lot of these principles include, analyzing power, developing leadership, gatekeeping, identifying and analyzing manifestations of racism, and you can see the list, of course, but the fundamental thing that we had to do was to really kind of get everybody on the same page. And so these principles really provided that sense of base camp, if you will, where we were to start.
Yes, and when we look at these principles, it's really important to understand that these principles don't go anywhere. The world changes, the situation changes, but these principles are how most anti-racist organizers operate the work that we do to make this change. So when we're talking about learning from history, we're not just talking about learning from a bigger idea of history, but knowing the history of the organization you're at, knowing the history of EPA, knowing the history of the identification and analyzing of the manifestation of racism as it applies within your own workplace, and then rolling it out until people understand how important that is. Networking. Networking is not about, shaking hands and saying hi. Networking is creating a net that works. And with people that are doing this organizing, we have a massive network. It's a net that catches things. We share culture. That's why when we introduce ourselves, we call our ancestors into the room. That's why we have certain ways in which everybody doing organizing work has a shared understanding. And we share our culture in doing that, right? And so also when we look at doing internalized racial oppression and internalized racial inferiority and superiority, we have to make sure all these other principles are with that, otherwise we're creating more harm. And then undoing racism, because it took us, 500 years to get it really good, get it just nailed down perfectly, and it's going to take us many, many, many years, and maybe not even in our lifetime or the next, to undo what has been created.
And part of that process is also, we work within systems, and systems can be very dehumanizing by default. It's the nature of systems to remove the individual from the situation and really look at them as just part of another piece of a whole. So one of the big things that we've tried to do is to really figure out how do we humanize this process and how do we bring people in as they are and who they are, but more specifically, where they are. And that's what brings us really to our sequential learning. So one of the big things that we found as we began to embark on this work was the fact that there were some people who had an understanding of what things were, how things worked, and how organizing worked, and there were other people who completely didn't know anything about that. And at the same time, they were expected to have a sense of collectivity and work together and trying to figure out how is it that you're going to make outcomes better for people and reduce harm. In order to do that, we really had to establish, again, that base and those principles, but also meet people where they were. And that meant providing trainings that were relevant to people in different areas, but also understanding what were the backgrounds that people were bringing. And that meant we had to really figure out, did it mean that people needed more time with dealing with their own internal stuff? Did it mean that people needed a space where they could vent and talk about their own struggles? All of these types of different situations that we were looking at meant that people were at different places, and we had to figure out how is it that we're going to meet them and how are we going to progress together, because really this work required that all of us actually be on the same page.
And when we did that, one of the examples that came out of that was, when we started, or I started 3 years ago, and then Enrico joined us a little more than a year ago. And when I started, I did a baseline assessment to see where people thought they were and where they actually were. And one of the things that I heard consistently was, I don't know where to start. Where do I even start with something like this? And so based on our background in organizing, I realized that there was shame and fear of failure that was in the way of people wanting to do this really great change work. And so I developed a racial equity library with our comms team, our communications team. And the racial equity library is a self-explorative opportunity for all of our house-based people and anyone in King County. And then, of course, it blew up and people are using it in the Bay Area and they're using it all over the place. But it's a place where there would be a clearinghouse of all kinds of materials that speak to racism and anti-racism and sort of the way in which it lays itself out in this country. And so that's a brief example of what we did at the beginning that was tangible, was develop that library. And so far from then, we have developed shared language, as you see. We have a sequential learning model. We've incorporated results-based accountability with an anti-racism model. So the sequential learning continues, and we obviously can go for years and years without running out of curriculum. So we have met some goals. We have increased our access to hazardous waste services. We have a person, Jose Ochoa, that worked diligently with community and developed a language access, language transcreationism model. We have increased our access by partnering with community-based I have smoke on the brain, community-based organizations. We have increased the impact of hazardous waste services by developing and growing partnerships, such as partnering with Mother Africa, with CMAR, when we're doing cleaning supply exchanges, we're working with CBOs and small businesses that are doing that work. And we've increased the equity of hazardous waste services by implementing racial equity priorities. And we can tell you that the way that that looks is that every single line of business that hazardous waste deals with, we embed race and racism in all of our considerations. We do equity impact reviews. We have a team that decolonized the project management tools that are normally used in government entities. And we have that called Reducing Harm, Breaking Barriers, which allows people in this work of environmentalism to be able to pull from some of the talents that are often overlooked because we are in this government structure, and develop a way in which people who do project management have an equitable seat at the table, no matter what that project is. Is that you?
So, yeah. So many of the tools that we've implemented in doing a lot of this work really goes back to the equity toolkits, but also planning and implementation guidance. And so one of the things that tends to happen, that hasn't happened before, is that the lines of business within hazardous waste consult us and consult racial equity as they move forward. And so an example of that could be, we had a degreasing project that was taking off here in the Seattle King County area. And prior to that program taking off, the team actually consulted the racial equity team and others within the program to ask the basic questions: are we making sure that people aren't being harmed by the program that we're implementing? And those weren't questions that were really asked before. And that's kind of a new thing, is to ask those types of questions beforehand rather than assuming that we already know what we don't know. We also are using the guiding principles that we mentioned at the very beginning, as well as national and regional resources. And so that means also consulting the folks that Minty was talking about, but also having a national presence. And we mentioned the People's Institute before. That is a national resource that people around the country use as an organizing tool and use as a way to really kind of share the knowledge as they continue to move forward.
So we are phasing out the term stakeholder, so we just want to note that we will be changing that slide and moving it to shareholder. For those of you who are unaware, our Aboriginal brothers and sisters in Australia, as well as our First Nation families, have felt some type of way about using the term stakeholder for historical reasons that I can't do the labor for you in this place that you can do, but we are trying to change our language to shareholder analysis. So when we're doing racial equity toolkits, we're not just doing it in our own bubble. We are bringing people in who will take a look, people who are shareholders, people who are impacted by a hazardous waste management program. And we tell people, you have to have people at the table that will let you know that there's a rat under the table. You have to have people at the table that will let you know that you have something on your chin. You cannot just have a bunch of people that are like, this is the best meal I've ever had. We have the Racial Equity Guide to Planning. That is important because when people want to recalibrate the system, one of the ways in which they do that is to revert back to the worship of the written word. So we have to use a guide that everyone understands. If I'm not here, if Enrique is not here, if the whole staff is not here, Do we still have a map for where we're going? And then audience selection. The racial equity toolkits oftentimes are rolled out with people that have no interest in a racial equity toolkit. It's just to check the box. And so they will then subsequently choose an audience that will check that box. We won't do that. So hazardous waste holds itself accountable by making sure that the feedback we get is unfiltered.
So as we've embarked on it beginning in 2018 with the actual strategic plan and the implementation plan, this was really where the rubber met the road. But also it was kind of a theory. There was not an actual practice implemented plan that had happened at that point. And so really the last 3 years have, 2018 to 2021, were a period of really trial and error. And so Minty and I have entered this phase in which we're really looking at what happened during that period and not only making recommendations, but asking for changes to be made in terms of how we function, but also the types of training, making sure that everybody across the board, not just folks who are the day-to-day workers, but also the leadership of our organization is on the same page when it comes to understanding racial equity and how it's actually plays itself out in our program. I will also point out that there's been a culture shift that is actually a difficult thing to quantify, and it's something that we've been working on to try and explain to folks. How do you actually explain when a culture has shifted? And the best way that we're finding to do that is to really point to examples of how we do things different. A really fun example that Minty and I have never had the pleasure of actually working on is actually finance. We have a finance person that works with us and checks with us about where our budget is and where budgets are and asks the question, is this in line with racial equity? That is a very, very different type of conversation that has not traditionally happened when it comes to doing organizing work, where you actually have the folks who hold the purse strings, but also asking questions very much like we are. And so where that takes us, what that means long term, we're still actually trying to figure that out. And so as we look at our implementation plan, we are going to be making recommendations that take into account the shifts in culture and the different ways that we do business.
And our resources, as we mentioned earlier, really center on these primary resources for support and networking. Most of you are probably familiar with GARE, Government Alliance on Race and Equity. That is part of Facing Race's Race Forward. And so Race Forward is getting ready to have their Facing Race conference in November, and it is already just packed with people. We do a lot of work with that. GARE gives us an opportunity to share our work and learn from others who are also committed to doing this work. Obviously, the Haas Institute, Othering and Belonging, provides us with a lot of policy understanding. I do want to note they do not do race equity work, and sometimes folks get confused with that and attend those thinking that they're getting racial equity tools, and it's a companion piece. We also rely on King County's Office of Equity and Social Justice. We want to shout out to Miss Anita Whitfield. She is our fearless leader there. And then when we got on board 3 years ago, we reconnected our relationships outside of work with the Affiliated Tribes of Northwest Indians, AT&I. For those of you who attend AT&I, you know the value of getting the information on what's being done in Indian country and how to serve our shareholders better. And then we have the City of Seattle's Race and Social Justice Initiative, RSJI, which People's Institute actually helped put together way back in the day with a lot of other wonderful, wonderful leaders. And then the Urban Indian Health Institute, if you're familiar with their work, you can find decolonized data practices. You can find really important reporting on what's happening with our urban native communities and how that environmentalism is being impacted by the work that is being done in Indian country and the work that is being done outside of Indian country.
So one of the big things, of course, that everybody can point to is how things have been significantly different over the last several years. As soon as 2020 hit, like everybody else, we shut down, and the conditions that we were working in, everything changed. We moved to a hybrid, or actually an all online situation where not only were we not able to be in physical proximity of each other, but we were also having to learn a new way to interact with each other. And that, of course, changed the dynamic. But then there was also the conditions that were going on around the country and around the world. If you think about what has happened, the case of George Floyd's killing, we had, here in Seattle, we had somewhat of an uprising where we had a lot of protests and a lot of issues going on with police. We had the missing and murdered Indigenous women. A lot of the things that were happening internationally, nationally, as well as locally, those things do have an effect on the psyche and on the well-being of the people that we work with and interact with. And one of the things that it taught us was we had to also consider the context that people were living in. There was no way to do this work without actually thinking about where are people at. And so that's what 2020 presented. 2021 was more of the same.
And if you can imagine, as we moved into 2021, COVID persisted. Everybody thought it would just be a couple of months of a shutdown, and it became real. The new variants came through. One of my parent agency is Public Health, Environmental Health. So you can imagine that a lot of our work, a lot of our colleagues had to be deployed into other work. There were, most of the people who were in the field doing field work are people of color, and I cannot imagine what it was like to show up in a black or brown body during that time in person, and the amount of stress that takes on somebody's psyche. We had onboarding in a completely new work environment. Nobody knows how to do, we didn't know how to do online onboarding at that point. And then expanding and increasing racial equity awareness and reconciliation globally, at that point we're having conversations in every single meeting, and we're trying to bring to light it's not just happening, things are not just happening in a bubble, bringing out not only MMIW, but boarding school, residential school unearthings, and black bodies being killed at exorbitant numbers, and just the hatred towards our Asian brothers and sisters during that time. It was a lot for everybody to then show up and try and do work.
And then, of course, as we've moved into this year, we've continued to have retirements and changing staff. But one of the most interesting things that happened this year so far has been that we've also had a proposed reorg, which has been very interesting because of the timing, but also the way how it was done. There have been a tremendous amount of lessons that have come out of that process as well. Of course, the economy is a big thing on everybody's mind. And then, of course, the monkeypox kind of represents the continued threat of pandemics and health issues that can creep up at any moment. These are real things that people are dealing with, and what it's required us to do is to really think about how we shift and pivot and really respond to where people are at. And so we've had to continue to broaden our scope in building awareness of hazardous waste, or in hazardous waste around these types of issues. We really looked at trying to figure out how we can adjust to online trainings instead of just in person. We talked about the sequential learning piece at the beginning. In order to continue to do that, we had to figure out how do we continue to interact with folks in a way that is meaningful. And this online process has been a very difficult, but at the same time, eye-opening experience on how it is that we look at interaction with each other. And then, of course, the self-care of individuals and how it is that people show up to their spaces. What is going on in their background? What is going on with our families? What is going on with our work situation? It became really important for us to even more so consider those dynamics as we move forward. it's a lot different when you can look at somebody in person and understand they're going through something versus I just see from here up and I don't really know what's in the background. And so that became a very important aspect of what we were doing.
And we have had successes. You know, it's interesting, people want to try and measure racial equity in their workplaces. And we always say, you know, that's hard work. It is not head work, it is not hand work. It's hard work. So if you're going to be evaluating hard work, you could not evaluate it the way you evaluate non-hard work. The way that you would decide, you know, I'm gonna take somebody's temperature is not how you would determine whether the person is sick or not, right? That's just one little tool. Hard work requires you to consider a stress test, right? Hard work requires that you listen to the beating of the heart, the rhythm of the heart. And so we've had successes. We have the Racial Equity Library, which as we've noticed, as we mentioned, has really, really blown up, and we've been excited and proud about that, and we're going to continue to expand on it. People at Hazardous Waste, all of our employees have gone through at least one UIR training, Undoing Institutional Racism training, at least one. Most people have gone through it, you know, either within the last year or the last 2 years. And we have expanded our outreach to tribal partners. As we mentioned, we have AT&I involvement, but we also have 2 tribes that are part of our organization's responsibility to report to, and that's Muckleshoot and Snoqualmie, and we have continued to grow those relationships. We have created collectively a culture that will envision that race will not be a determinant in hazardous waste exposure. And we have the creation of the Reducing Harm Breaking Barriers team that we mentioned earlier for project management. You're muted.
Oh, they're saying that's it. That's our last slide.
Please, everybody stand. Sit down.
Thank you, Enrique and Minty. That was an enlightening presentation. I'm sure we'll have lots of questions at the end of all the panelists. I'd like to next introduce Maria Corona from the California Green Business Network. Corona is a bilingual sustainability professional with social media marketing, design, and environmental justice expertise. She oversees social media marketing and the Equity Committee for the California Green Business Network, and is the City of Watsonville's Program Director, where she works with English and Spanish-speaking businesses. Thank you for speaking with us today.
See my notes. Awesome. All right. Thanks for having me here. Okay, so these are my old notes, so good thing I printed them. All right. So thanks for having me here. I'm glad we could all meet today. I'm excited to share with you some of the equity work that we've done, and then I want to hear ideas and the discussion afterwards of anything you all have done or what comes to mind. So, as Jessica said, I'm the chair for CAGN's Equity Committee. My name is Maria Corona. I'm a first-gen Mexican-American. I currently live in Santa Cruz, California, which is unceded territory of a Waswa-speaking Yupi tribe. But I grew up in mid-city, South Central LA, in Los Angeles, an area that has some of the highest rates of asthma in the city. Let me see, can you hear me better? Okay. I was in the city due to the proximity to freeways and polluting industries. So these environmental issues are often overlap with areas of low-income communities, Black, Latinx, Indigenous communities of color, as Jessica pointed out earlier. And this intersection of pollution and social inequity are the environmental injustices that we're here trying to mitigate. So sustainability does not just mean protecting the environment, it also means striving for healthier communities for the residents that live in these communities. So our program offers resources, connections, education, rebates, and more to small and medium-sized businesses. All right, and so these communities are often hit first and the worst by the impacts of climate change. And since we work with businesses, we believe that all businesses should have access to benefits of going green for their bottom line, for the health of their workers in the community. But by making programs accessible to all, it sometimes doesn't reach the ones that you want to reach. So it's important to also have capacity to serve the businesses you do this outreach to. Capacity in different ways, such as language and funds. So my colleague posed this question, and now I pose it to you as we go through today. Are we asking these communities to go above and beyond for the planet, our program goals, or are we offering them services and resources that can help the business, their businesses and community? As long as we're sure we're serving them and not asking them to serve our dreams and goals, and that seems like justice to me. So thus, we wanted to make our programs more accessible and equitable to these historically excluded communities. So this effort to be more inclusive has been a pretty deep process and required a real investment in time, willingness to change what was kind of working, and it was a paradigm shift where we began redesigning for businesses that typically were less likely to certify for our green business program, instead of the early adopters, how we used to do it. So moving the needle on equity meant looking deeply at our history and reassessing our values, goals and strategies, and leading with humility to humbly reinvent ourselves. All right. So in order to do this, we have to step back and look internally, as Minty and Enrique pointed out in their presentation. We started the Equity Committee in 2020 to find ways to help BIPOC communities and business owners. We also started this committee to incentivize staff to work with underserved businesses, train and hire appropriate staff, to incentivize, to work with culturally appropriately community-based organizations. That was the key for our program to succeed. And so we did some exercises and at our conferences. So one of them was the Continuum on Becoming an Anti-Racist Multicultural Organization. And this was to self-assess our network, who runs the program, who's on our board, and who our program serves. We also did an anti-racist training to determine what were some of the barriers to achieve equity goals. So I want to ask you all a question. What are some barriers for businesses or community members to be a part of these environmental programs? Don't jump.
Language. Time.
Language, cost, time. Any other ones? Awesome. Money, yes. Money is usually a factor as well. These are all things that we also realized were barriers for our businesses. With this anti-racist training that was facilitated by Donnie Richards, if you all ever need an anti-racist training, he's great to do this with. What we realized, besides cost, money, time, our biggest barrier was trust. Trust in the community members. They heard, oh, there's this environmental program, but what's the catch? Or, oh, you're giving me money, but what do I have to do? So trust was the biggest thing that we found out, and working with community-based organizations was the best way to gain community members' trust. We also did a racial equity scan tool, so from the San Francisco environment. And this tool helps with program counting, making sure that you have equity front and center, where you determine a burden benefits analysis of the program and determine who in your community needs to be engaged, just to name a few of the items of this tool. So you can see this on screen. So the SFE members that were actually here for this conference are doing this training right now as we speak. So they had to step away, and they're doing this training for their programs in the San Francisco environment. So they run a few different programs as well as Green Business and Healthy Nail Salon, and a few other ones. But yeah, this is a tool that will be offered to all of you if you want to look at your programs, ask these questions about your programs, and see who your shareholders are. So for the California Green Business Network, we work to identify and lower barriers of entry for our program. A lot of times our programs, as I was talking to another coordinator here, Jolene, a lot of times when they see our program measures, it's really long and businesses don't have time to actually work on this. So we lowered our barrier by doing an efficiency tier. So these are about 13 measures that will bring cost savings and utility savings to the business. And when businesses actually complete these 13 measures, they say, oh, that was easy, I can do this. Let me just move on, and they usually get certified through the next year, and then they get more funds and benefits as well. So we also have additional rebates for BIPOC-owned businesses, and other things that we did were diminishing language barriers and help with online navigation. So our Green Business program is on a database, and a lot of times smaller businesses that are doing the best to run their own business aren't as tech savvy, so we do that technical work for them. We work with them in different ways, over the phone, in person, but we do a lot of hand-holding, but if that's what gets the business through the certification in the program, then we're happy to do it. So we also offer resources and outreach in different languages. In California, there is the second biggest language is Spanish. So we have a website that indicates when a business needs assistance. They sign up through our website /ES. Currently, we have these talleres de sustentabilidad going on. So as you can see on the photo, there's different topics about energy savings, waste reduction, electrifying your home or business, transportation. So we delve into these sections on these webinars in Spanish for community members and businesses. And all of these sections are part of our program. So we give chunks of information so that it's easier to digest. And then if they're interested of our program, then they come and sign up. But at least this way, they're getting digestible chunks of knowledge. And also, partnering with community-based organizations, as I said, is the biggest key in having our program succeed. So some of the CBOs that we work with are the Chinese Business Association and El Concilio of San Mateo County to outreach to their own community. And this is the best approach in implementing environmental programs in these communities. So this is a case study of our of El Concilio San Mateo, but I wanted to highlight that we contracted the California State Business, the California Green Business Network is staffed by people, and we help run the California statewide program, but there are 48 programs in the state of California, individual ones run by cities, counties, chambers, and all in all, we've contracted with about 10 CBOs, and by contracted, I mean that we pay them to let their members and community members know about our events, our programs, and then we get them to talk to us. So by working with CBOs, they're already trusted in the community, they're already helping them with other programs, other funds, other resources, and that's what gets us through the door. Working with CBOs, maybe when I was doing the exercise in the morning, a lot of things I kept hearing was, how do I get, my struggle is getting people to be a part of our programs, be a part of our trainings. So I would suggest that you reach out to multiple CBOs. So you can see this photo, it's about 3 or 4 community-based organizations in San Mateo County. So the coordinator in that county reached out to multiple CBOs about this contract opportunity, trained them about what our program was and what points they would help deliver to the community members. And we set up contracts and deliverables for the CBOs that actually wanted to be involved or had time. And they chose a point person. Then our program staff partnered with CBOs to do this outreach initially for our program offerings, and we did Spanish community webinars, completed efficiency businesses as well. So these CBOs, it was crucial for them and for us because they leveraged their reputation and relationships to build connections to this program. So you can see here, the contract only asked the community member, the CBO lead was the one on the left, his name is Luis, and we asked him to reach out to 100 businesses. But we know that when you outreach to businesses, it's usually maybe 25%, maybe 20% of those that are actually interested, maybe 10% of those that actually sign up for the program. But because he was so well connected in the community through El Concilio, but also through his past work with small businesses, he actually enrolled 80 businesses in this program. So almost all of them were Spanish-speaking Latino, and 17 of those businesses, and now more, because these numbers are from 2021, completed efficiency. And there was a lot of funds available. And in San Mateo County, the state of California actually offers about $1,000 in rebates for businesses, but in San Mateo County is a well-funded program. So they offer almost $2,000 for their businesses to be part of these programs. So for water efficiency, for prebates, where we actually help the business get the items that they need. And this is also happening in San Francisco in well-funded areas and programs is where if you have the funds to give to these businesses, do so. And if you can get more funds, do so, because that's also key. Trust and being able to pay businesses to do the programs that you want them to do. All right, so another thing we also did, I work for Environmental Innovations, and we're the ones that staff the statewide program. So we're hiring from the community. Cagbin staff grew from me when I started 3 years ago as a culturally relevant person in the city of Watsonville, which is 75% Spanish speaking. And now we have 5 bilingual team members that speak English and Spanish and are culturally relevant for the program areas that we serve in Monterey Bay area and San Mateo County. We ask to be intentional about the hiring process, being explicit about the needs of the community. So now Watsonville Native actually runs the Watsonville Green Business Program. But the person that ran the Watsonville program, she worked in public works, her name was Hilda. And she told my boss, I need someone that's culturally relevant, and that's why I was hired. So, being explicit is key to making these programs work. You want to be intentional about the hiring process as well. And by hiring from the community, like I said, they're usually very well connected. So Luis was able to connect us with Spanish media like Univision and Telemundo to reach out to more Spanish-speaking communities. So you can see in this slide, these are some of the CBOs and Spanish media giants that we were able to connect with for our program. So that our program would be known by thousands, if not millions, of Spanish-speaking homes in California. I talked to some of my bilingual team members, and they said that their dad always has the TV on and watches the news. So whenever something comes on, they're able to talk about it. So Spanish-speaking communities do watch Telemundo, NBC, and Univision. As you can see here, we also work with the Mexican Consulate of Fresno and San Jose. So being able to diversify who you're talking to, who you're getting this message out to is key also for these environmental programs to work. And I've been doing a few interviews with Telemundo and Univision, and I put a phone number out there, and as soon as it airs, I get at least 10 calls asking about our green business program and wanting to sign up, or what are these funds about, how do I get it? Because they're getting it from these news media, so trying to reach out to them is a way to also get your program known and your offerings known. All right. And also, so these are some of the things that are happening nationwide. Thankfully, thanks to Cassie and my coworker Julianne as well, the U.S. EPA Exchange Network has this environmental justice focus. So these are some of, so the EPA allowed other states to license our environmental database for 2 years at no cost to run programs in their own state, such as the St. Louis, Missouri program. And Cassie is also working on an environmental justice map with the Illinois Green Business Program team. And they're developing this map with geospatial data sets to align green business programs nationally with these environmental justice priorities that you see on the screen. Racial and ethnicity data, environmental data, business data, climate, and economic indicator data. And in the next slide, you'll see a similar scale of this that our coordinators and an intern did for the state of California. So you can see here that using our green business data, census data, and coronavirus green metrics, this map was created. So coronavirus green is a mapping tool that helps identify California communities that are disproportionately burdened by multiple sources of pollution, such as high rates of asthma and poor air quality, just to name a few. So thus, if there is a community vulnerability index for your community that you want to reach out to, these are one of the things to start with. Although it's not the end-all solutions, you have to look at other factors as well. So this is just a tool to help if there is any in your areas as well. And lastly, I want to say that we need to be intentional with the communities you want to reach. So specifically for us, we work with businesses. Thus, we target specific types of businesses as well as communities. For example, we are targeting agricultural and salons to be able to do our green business program with these businesses, restaurants as well, because there are environmental laws that just went into effect recently, such as SB 1383, as well as local ordinances. And we're also doing a Green Schools District pilot. So we're serving schools in Watsonville and Santa Cruz County, and we're working with janitorial services to make sure they get Safer Choice, Green Seal, or Eco Logo, which you'll hear more about next. And with that, I wanted to show a short clip of one of our other businesses. I don't know if there's time for that, but it's about 30 seconds.
Mi nombre es Verdera, yo soy uno de los dueños de Dos Hermanos Crucería, que es una móvil. Nosotros nos unimos al programa para tratar de ayudar al medio ambiente a prevenir la contaminación.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yo soy Verdera, yo soy...
Thank you.
So sorry, I just didn't want to spend time making sure that we could play the video and showing it, but I will let you know that we are compiling all of the slides as well as the resources discussed and links. I know, Corona, you have another video as well from Watsonville that you were interested in sharing. So we will share those after the session with you all, and I'll work with Jean to get that out to everybody. So sorry for the technical difficulty there, Corona, but thank you so much for your presentation. Okay. Okay, I'd like to switch over to our final presenter of our panel, Angel Contreras Cruz. And he was born and raised in Oaxaca, Mexico. He received his bachelor's in 2004 and master's in 2015 in industrial engineering and regional development of the Institute of Technology at Oaxaca, Mexico. In 2019, he joined the PhD program in the Engineering and Technology Management at Portland State University. Angel was a part of the 2020 Oregon Applied Sustainability Experience cohort working on Safer Choice certification projects. He joined PPRC, he is the Pollution Prevention Resource Center, in July, and has been working since then with Hispanic groups. Angel's community engagement focuses on educating people about the acquisition of safer products in the cleaning industry. and we know you'll love his presentation. Thank you so much, Angel, for joining us today.
Thank you, Cassie, for that great introduction. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to see human faces, not just see pictures when we have presentations on Zoom. Okay, well, my name is Contreras. I'm working with the Pollution Prevention Resource Center, and today I'm going to talk about the work that we have been doing with Hispanic communities compared with the work that Maria is doing. We're doing some baby steps, but I think every important project works like that. So our topic today is engaging the Hispanic communities to Safer Choice webinars in Spanish. So let's go. So this is our agenda for today. It's like a very brief presentation. We're going to have like an introduction, why our work is important, the work that we are doing with the Hispanic communities, the lessons that we have learned, and we're going to have some time for questions and answers. Well, as an introduction, as Casey mentioned, I had the opportunity to collaborate in a project leading a Safer Choice certification with a company called Oregon Soap Company. So I remember that I have like a job interview where my former manager asked me okay, tell me what you know about Safer Choice. So back in that time, in 2020, I didn't know anything. So I was like, well, I don't know what you were talking about, but I had some experience working with different type of green certifications like ISO 14001 and also some Mexican green standards. So we were able to have a conversation about that, what the goal of the project was. Well, I ended up having this job, and we did some work about Safer Choice. So since then, I became like a Safer Choice advocate in one way or another. So this type of certifications in my home country also have some elements in common with Safer Choice, like help companies to gain recognition from customers, and also to help companies to achieve their environmental goals. So one thing to consider is that when you move from one country to another, there are different things that you are going to learn, like a new culture, new language, and of course you can learn also like new type of certifications. So that was the case for me when I learned about Safer Choice. So what is important to reach out to communities of color when you are talking about these projects like Safer Choice? So when I was reading the EPA website, and when I learned that I was going to talk about in this panel about environmental justice, and I need to be honest with you, this topic by itself is kind of like new for me. It's not that I didn't know anything before, but I didn't know that this concept exists. So we as people of color in Mexico, we also face this type of issues. Sorry. Like, even though like brown people are the largest group in Mexico, we face some kind of discrimination with other people. So it is important to learn and identify like what we are doing in order to achieve this mission of the from the EPA agency. So one of the things that caught my attention is that all people from all races, color, nationalities, have the same importance in the decision-making process. Well, if we take into consideration when we are talking about Hispanic communities as communities of color, most of the people that live in the United States come from rural Mexico. So these people are most of the time, or they lack education. In some instances, they just finish elementary school, middle school, so they weren't able to go to or to pursue higher education. And I mean, they have some difficulties even communicating in Spanish, because some of these people, they speak like a different language, and Spanish is the second language. So just imagine the barrier of reading labels for products in a third language, like English, right? Sometimes these things can be seen like, okay, like why you can identify that there are risks in some of these labels, but people, they don't have access to a third language, for example. So that's part of the work that we are doing. So I'm going to skip this slide. I mean, this is something that got my attention. Well, I'm going to mention something about this quote. I remember that when I worked with the Safer Choice, the Oregon Soap Company, when we as individuals do some changes in our everyday life, of course we have like a positive impact in the environment. But when companies do the changes because of the amount of ingredients, for example, or packaging materials, so they buy like larger quantities. So when they decided to do like a change, the impact is even bigger. So that's why I include this quote, and I think at some point it's talking about this idea that I have. So if we wanna see like the numbers of the people that are working in the cleaning industry, according to some studies, there are almost 4 million people working in the cleaning industry in the United States. Almost between 20 or 30% of these people are from the Hispanic community. So these people face additional challenges as the one that I mentioned before. For example, there are some bigger stressors for these communities because they face economic vulnerability. They also face some stressors like immigration issues. And also they have a higher risk of being exposed to toxic chemicals and at some point get some illness or have like an accident or even they can die because they do the work without prevention. I'm going to mention why. So we as Hispanic communities, we have like a culture when we respect authority. Bad or good, I mean, I don't know, right? So when we are kids, we are told that we need to respect our elders, that we need to respect our authorities, that we need to respect like the levels that are offered in the chain of command. So for example, when if we are talking about like doing like a cleaning project and you have like a cleaning crew, just imagine that you need like 10 people to clean this area. But the day that you are gonna do the job, just 8 people show up. And the other 2, they, like, for some reason or another, they are absent. So the manager is gonna tell the 8 people, okay, I need you to finish this. And the 8 people are gonna say yes, even though they are not satisfied. Why? Because we have this culture of have the work done. So we work really hard in order to accomplish a goal, because we are living in a country that is not, our country by itself, and we have the idea that because we are living here, we need to do the job with all and we willingly or not accept the conditions that are imposed in that specific moment. So this is something that we need to change. This is a conversation that I have had with different people working not just in the cleaning industry, but in the service industry in general, in agricultural jobs in general. So I just wanted to provide you some general idea or a general picture of the problems that we face as communities of color. Now I'm going to share with you part of the work that we have doing with PPRC. So as I mentioned, I started to work as an environmental intern in July 2022. So one of the goals that we have working with my supervisors, Brittany and Michelle, was that we needed to provide information to the Hispanic communities about the work that we have doing with Safer Choice. In the past, PPRC offered training or Safer Choice training to businesses and people working in the cleaning industry in English. So to take our work further, and also, using my my abilities, I'm able to communicate in English. I'm learning after almost 7 years living in the United States. Every day, I always learn something new. But Spanish is my native language, and so they use that skill that I have in order to engage the Hispanic communities. So we decided to translate the materials and provide these trainings in Spanish to people working in the cleaning industry. People working and businesses also. So basically what we did, we started to plan these webinars. So we use social media to promote our webinars, Facebook, LinkedIn, and also we try to reach out to the local media. Univision Portland, there is a radio station called Radio Poder that also helped us to spread the word of our webinars. So I explained, okay, this is the goal of our webinar. It's a free event, so you are going to learn something new if you are in the cleaning industry. And one of the comments that they tell me is that what I am going to sell. So I explain, I'm not going to sell you anything. This is just free training. I want you to know about this certification, but sometimes that's a big barrier. They think that I'm going to sell something, but that is not the case. Okay? So in this slide, it shows some part of the information that we provide during our webinars. So we start with the objective of the webinar. So we have a short survey. If the people that attend the webinar know about Safer Choice, mostly half % of the people that attend our webinars are aware or have tried one product that is Safer Choice certified. And also trying to confirm what Maria mentioned, we try to put some, or to use visuals that are easy to identify. For example, the picture on the upper right corner, we show with colors like the potential risk that people can have if they are using specific products. So the close that this product is to the color green, the safer is this product. But because in order to have a better message to our Hispanic communities, we need to use a simple Spanish. If we use some fancy words in Spanish, they are not gonna comprehend our message. So we explain what are the differences between the safer choice labels, the ones that are used for home or the ones that are used for industrial use. We also explain and cover the list DFE and list N about disinfectants. And well, we wrap up our webinars always having our contact information in case that they want to have like a one-to-one session, so we can work with these organizations and provide some training. So this is another difficulty what we have facing. Businesses, they don't follow up. So I try to send emails, give them a call, in order to have some feedback from them, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult, so we have more work to do in the future. Here are some key takeaways. So almost 60% of our attendees are from agencies, from government or other non-profit organizations, and 40% are from business owners or people working in the cleaning industry. So I think that we need to engage more the people that are working in the cleaning industry. Sometimes we have like 10 people that they sign up for our webinar, but just 4 or 5 show up. So I mean, this is what it is. So we cannot change that, but I mean, we always try to invite as more people that we can. We talk about gender. We have more people from the male side, than the female side. So we need to increase the participation of our female attendees, as we mentioned in previous slides. People working in the cleaning industry are mostly women. So we need to increase that participation. And the last graph shows like the different cities where our attendees are living or are working. So these webinars are like the goal is to promote safer choice among the Portland metropolitan area. But also we have had some attendees that they live or work in Vancouver, Washington. I mean, it's very close, but I think that's good because we are trying to spread the word not just in the Portland metropolitan area, but also in other places. So here is some feedback that we have received from the people that have attended our webinars. I'm not gonna go through all of them. But I'm going to mention 2 examples that I really like. The first one was from a person that is like, they are selling safer choice products through their organization. So he said that I like the webinar or the class on how to take care of the environment. I think that you are also contributing with your bit of change to improve the environment. Well, this is not just me. Behind of each webinar, there is a lot of work that we do along with my supervisor, Brittany. So we plan we spend like about 10 to 15 hours of work for every webinar, making phone calls, posting advertisement on Facebook, LinkedIn, doing follow-up with organizations, sending emails. And we do some rehearsal before the day of the presentation, and also the day of the presentation. It takes like about 1 hour, 75 minutes for the whole process. And then another comment that caught my attention was the one from a owner of a cleaning business. So he mentioned that how we can pass our message to the EPA so they can learn a lot from us, like they are the final user of the cleaning product, right? So I think it's important to learn the experience that they have with these products. I just want to mention this with this slide. And finally, some lessons that we have learned. So I work with Michelle, Brittany from PPRC, and myself. So what are the lessons that we have learned during these webinars? So I think it's important, not just for us, but for any organization that is trying to engage communities of color or communities from that they speak a different language, to create pollution prevention fact sheets in multiple languages. Also build partnerships. So partnership is a key. If you do the work, it's fine, but if you partner with different organizations, I think that your goal is going to be bigger, and also you are going to engage more people. Create a safer choice sample program. So we are working on this. So we offer the attendees of our webinars, like if you have a product in mind that you want to try, we can buy a sample for you and we can deliver to your house or to your organization. Well, one of the things is that I sent the follow-up, but I didn't receive any feedback. So remember that I mentioned that Hispanic businesses or people, they don't trust at all. So this is part of the work that we need to do, like how we can be like more trustful to them. Also, I think that we can create social media content in English, but also in Spanish or in any other language that you target. I think that this is gonna help to build like a good relationship with the people, with your target audience. Also provide certified trainings to businesses. For example, if they take like a safer choice training and they got like a certification, they can use this training in order to have like a future business opportunities. Demonstration of products. This is something that I have received some feedback about this. I think that when we hear something, we can believe it or not, but when we can see it, I think it's easier to have like a validation, right? So if we offer like online or in-person demonstration of the efficiency of safer choice product, I think it's gonna add like more points to the certification by itself. And as the two other presenters said, well, employ bilingual staff. So for example, in my case, I'm an international student. I don't need a sponsorship in order to work. So I work with a program called CPT. So there are plenty of international students in the universities, in American universities, that can help you. For example, in case you have like a project in Chinese or Taiwanese, I mean, I don't know, there are plenty of people, and this is not gonna be an extra cost for you or your organization. That being said, I think it's all that I have. Thank you so much, and if you have questions, I'm happy to answer. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to all of our panelists today. Thank you so much, Minty and Enrique, also for joining us virtually. I do want to open the floor to questions for our panelists, specifically if folks have questions for Minty or Enrique. I know they are virtual, so you can follow up with them via email, but if you have any questions for them now, please ask, and then we'll open it up to our other panelists. Yes?
Hi, I have a question for, they talked about project management for equitable change. So what type of project management principles do they use for these change equity projects that they're doing?
Sure. Minty and Enrique, the question is, what types of principles do you use for equitable project management?
I just wanted to highlight that we've been working with a work group called Reducing Harm, Breaking Barriers, that really focuses on project management and incorporates racial equity into their process. And so That's one we could expand on, but it's a very different way in doing project management that we have not had before.
Another way that we've done that was that we worked with the research team and gave them the support to decolonize the way in which they collect data and the way that they identify where the barriers and gaps are in the way that we take care of our taxpayers' dollars.
That work is resulting in really changing how we do projects and how we roll them out. These were not things that we were doing before, but the group itself has uncovered some of the barriers that are systemic, but are also kind of cultural. And so they're pointing those out and starting to revamp how people use not just the project tools, but also how they really initiate projects and who runs them, who's involved, and who they're talking to in the process.
Great, thank you both. Any other questions? Minty, Enrique, Corona, Angel, does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Yeah, Angel mentioned earlier about being able to gain trust in the communities that you're working with, and I would like to ask any of the presenters today of successful ways in which they were able to pass such a barrier.
And for Minty and Enrique, where the question was about strategies and different practices for building trust with communities. We're going to let Angel speak, and then if you have comments, I will cue you in.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that question. Yes, so I think that what I mentioned was that Hispanic communities, like in general, I'm going to be in trouble. So I think we don't trust, when we live in the United States, basically because of immigration status. Okay? Even though there are people that change their legal status over time, they have that chip. So, like, you don't trust the police, you don't trust the authorities or the government agencies. So part of our work that we need to do as organizations is to first introduce who you are. What's the mission of your organization? What is the service or training that you are gonna offer, and how the business can, or the people that is gonna attend can benefit from it. I think if you work in these probably basic settings, it's gonna help you to build trust. And also use your social media as a tools to increase to build trust with your target community. So we have, for example, a YouTube channel, and we posted our training, so it's right there. So if you don't want to attend because you want to keep your identity out of the world, so you can watch the video on your own. So you can use all the available resources in order to gain trust with your community.
Yeah, so building trust, as I said in my presentation, it was the biggest thing, the biggest barrier for environmental programs, and really knowing what community-based organizations are available in those communities already was the biggest thing that helped. So making sure that you reach out to these community-based organizations that already have the trust, so that you don't have to continuously do that. If they're so reaching out to them, and if for whatever reason there might not be one, but usually there are community-based organizations there already. That would be the biggest thing. But if you're having a hard time connecting with them, I would suggest it just takes a lot more work. Showing up to these businesses and these community members 3 or 4 times until they finally say, oh, okay, yeah, you've ate here a million times now. You've visited me at least 5 times now. Okay, fine. Now I believe you. Now I know that you're actually offering these services. And also for our program, a business referral goes a long way. I was talking to SFE that finally came back, and I was talking to them earlier, and that business referral program is one of our main measures for our business program. And so saying, hey, the taqueria down the street just finished their certification, and they suggested you would benefit from this program. Oh, Sarah told you about me? Okay, great. Then yeah, I'll be part of this program. So just having connections through other community members is really key in building trust.
I just want to add that I could hear a little bit about what you all were saying there, but to answer the question in terms of trust, I think it's also important to point out that Minty and I were originally folks who opposed and protested and pushed to get government to respond to community need. That's where we started. It's a very interesting dynamic to sit within a government agency now being an employee, and yet at the same time still having a level of accountability to our community members, not just who we work for. So the element of trust for us is relevant and really tied to the level of connection that we have to the people in the community that we come from. If we're not connected, then we really have no standing, and then we really have no trust. So in order for us to be able to do this work, we have to maintain that connection to our community.
Yeah, and we have our organizing background, as Enrique said, that we started when we were young. So we've been trained really carefully about organizing and understanding how those dynamics play out. But we also have done this work, as we mentioned at the beginning, in several different areas. So we were in police reform work for several years together, and you can imagine that was a very challenging work. I am still in prison work. I do prison reform for Indigenous people. So we have kitchen tables of accountability, and those kitchen tables are really important, and they're not a bunch of people who cheerlead for us. They are people who really, really make us think critically about our responsibility to everybody. It's a collective thing.
I hope you all took away some great things that you can deploy in your organization. Again, we will share out the resources, the slide decks that were shared today. I know that Minty and Enrique, they will be joining us here virtually, so we'll make sure your contact information gets out if folks have any questions. Angel and Corona will be around the rest of the day, our Univision TV stars here. Please, they'll be signing autographs later, but please feel free to approach them, talk to them more, ask them your questions. And I hope you can continue to carry these themes and conversations throughout the rest of our day, because really thinking about how we look inward before we work with communities externally is going to be so important to diving, not only addressing some of the social inequities, but also the environmental equities and the environmental justice communities that we serve. So thank you all for hanging in there with us. I hope you gained a lot today, and we'll revisit you here back soon. I'll turn it over to Jean to guide us through the rest of the day. Thank you.
Let's hear for